Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald near Hannibal at the Garth Mansion. This is the cottage that the Garths built. Their townhome in Hannibal was about the same size. This mansion is notable for many reasons. One, Mr. Garth was a very good friend of Mark Twain, and some say that Twain modeled the character Tom Sawyer after John Garth. And Mark Twain, as an adult when he came back to Hannibal, stayed in this house. Each room has one of the original furnishings from the period. It's a wonderful tour. Well, Julie Rolson, the Garth Mansion is just remarkable.
Thank you.
You and your husband John have owned it for what, 15 years?
We're into our 15th year,
15
yes.
years.
Yeah.
People come back to see what kind of changes you've made because you're making changes to it all the time.
Constantly. We're always upgrading, we're always doing something.
What does it feel like to own a one-of-a-kind piece of property that is, well, it's massive? What does it feel like?
It is really awesome. I never forget that we own this place. I mean, we'll come back at night, the house will be all lit up, and it's like, whoa, John, we like own this place. And then he reminds me of the mortgage payments.
But yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
It is a lot of responsibility. I mean, we're so lucky that we have really good staff that helps us take care of everything and keeps it all up to date. And it's usually some big event when something goes wrong, but I work best under pressure, so it's like, okay.
Well, it's on the National Register of Historic Places.
Correct.
So that there was a certain amount of responsibility went into actually getting it to that point to where it could be registered.
Right, you had to prove all the little things, and that was done before we came, so we didn't have to worry about that part.
Right, but there's still, as we'll learn from John, there were certain things that you needed to do to keep the integrity of the place the way it should be.
Exactly, to keep the integrity of it and keep it like the Garths would have. I feel like I'm taking care of it for Mrs. Garth. They have no descendants, so I kind of feel like I'm taking care of it for her.
Good. And we're going to learn more about the Garths as we go. We're going to learn more about this flying staircase too. But if we would, let's first go in here because I want to show if Mr. Garth's gentleman friends had been invited to the house, after dinner they would have come into the smoking room. This would have been their room, right?
Yes, most definitely. There's no mirrors in here because men didn't look at themselves in
is
the
that
mirror.
right? They didn't want
this would have just been where they would have closed the door and discussed all the happenings and, you know, the stock exchange and what cattle is doing now, because they had several cattle, some cattle out here, so.
And they'd smoke a Garth cigar, probably, while they were here, right?
Not probably, most definitely. His father was a tobacco, yes, and he did, and he and his brother, David Garth, they took over the company from his father. So, yes, I mean, right along there with Samuel Clemens, they smoked some of Garth's cigars.
This was not a piano room. There was not a piano in here, but you can't help but display this because this is one piece of work here, isn't it?
It is. It's a Steinway, 1869.
Square grand.
Square grand. And the reason they don't make square grands anymore is they don't hold their tune. You have to get them tuned more often. So the larger grands take up more room. This is made entirely out of rosewood, and it's all original. All the pieces, you know, the whole thing is. So
it's remarkable.
It really is,
it's remarkable.
Pretty awesome.
And it's from 1869.
1869. When we had it redone, inside out, polished, clean, the whole bit, the gentleman out of St. Louis that did it for us said that he will not redo it if we put it in the same place because it sat in this corner over here, in the window, on a heat vent, in the sunshine.
Oh, okay.
And he was livid.
It would bleach it out, and the heat would dry it out.
Right. The sides were peeling off, and you couldn't play it. So many of the keys didn't work. So. You know, I was a young little 42-year-old girl. It's like, oh, sure, $20,000. That's no big deal. Let's refinish it. So I kind of surprised my husband on that one. But we are really glad now. I mean, it's been featured in Steinway magazine that it's one of the few Steinways that you can touch and that you can play. So it is pretty awesome.
The men probably would have come on and they turned their backside to the fire here while they smoked because this would be the warmest place. But you know that when you're in these rooms, which rooms you're in because the ornament on the fireplace is different in each room.
Yes, this is a centurion head, knowledge. You know, the whole thing going on.
It's beautiful marble. And marble, you have marble fireplaces throughout
the whole house, Carrera marble.
Are we going to count the fireplaces? Do we have, what 11 fireplaces
well,
or 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, there is about 10 or 11.
10 or 11 fireplaces.
10 or 11 fireplaces,
Oh,
yeah.
man, that's gorgeous. And on this ground floor, most of the furnishings in here are Garth furnishings, aren't they?
Our Garth furnishings, yes. This came from the second owner here. This piece is like really awesome. A lot of people will see this and they'll go, oh, this was, one of the first wheelchairs. And no, it wasn't a wheelchair just because it's on wheels. It was one of the first, like,
a recliner.
Lazy boy. It's a recliner.
I'll be darned.
Isn't that awesome?
And that was in the house.
And
okay.
that was in the house
When
here.
did they build this house?
It was started in 69 and finished in 71.
1871.
1871.
And as we'll learn too, when we learn more about the Garths, this was not their main house. This was their house in the country. They had a townhouse.
Just their cottage to get
This
away.
was
This was
the
referred
cottage.
to as Woodside.
This was the cottage.
This was the cottage. It was 1 square mile, and Hannibal was 1 square mile, 640
Oh, the property
acres.
here was 640 acres.
640 acres, and Hannibal was 640 acres.
Wow.
So they just bought a cottage the same size as the city that they lived in.
man.
So there were
Okay.
a lot of wealthy people in town, but they were the only ones that actually had a cottage outside in the country.
Okay, so if the preacher were coming over, he wouldn't go into the smoking room. He'd be led into the formal parlor.
Yes.
This is where the civilized people were welcomed,
Correct.
I guess, huh?
Yes.
And
more so.
while we're talking about these fireplaces and these heads, this one has a specific.
This one is the
too.
lion's head, right? This is all. This is Carrara marble again. That mountain range was pretty big, so you'll see the gray, the white, the brown throughout the whole house.
And
all
why
the
the
different.
lion's head? What did that signify?
Well, this is the purity and the strength. So this is going to be more formal in here with the lion head.
You went to considerable. This is the chandelier and this crest above it are just beautiful. You went to considerable trouble when you got the wallpaper for these rooms.
Yeah,
you
we
had it
did.
made, didn't you?
Yeah, they were a fortune. The wallpapers in this whole floor and up the staircase was made. The curator did a lot of research on what the Garths would have done, and it is a big deal.
Wow. And who'd you have make it?
Robert Christie out of Quincy. He did quite a few properties.
He was your curator.
Yes.
Yeah. And he arranged to have the paper made, huh? He knew where to go.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a pretty awesome guy.
Let's talk about these Garths over here. We've got some pictures out. This is John, right?
Yes, that's John
And he
Garth.
he was the patriarch. He was the one. He was a very wealthy man, but he inherited some wealth, didn't he? His father was a wealthy fellow.
Well, not. He inherited his tobacco company, but he went to New York and he went to Mizzou and he went to banking school. So he was a banker and he was really pretty much responsible for the majority of his wealth.
All right.
So he was a self-made man and didn't have any problems with sharing his wealth along with his wife.
The cigars we talked about were the cigar company that his father founded and that he took over after his dad died,
Correct.
I guess.
He and his brother David. Yes.
But Mark Twain said some interesting things about Garth cigars. I guess they had a cheap line. And,
They had,
and
yes.
Samuel Clemens would
even poverty. The damnness, yes. Garth's damnness, yes.
Is that what he called it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And this is Mrs.
That's
Garth.
the daughter, Annie.
Oh, this is the daughter.
This is the
Okay.
daughter when she was married. That was an article that was in the newspaper that was printed of what she wore and who was there and the whole bit.
And then next to it is Mrs. Garth, these
That is
two
Mrs.
pictures
Garth.
here. And you're very impressed with this woman, aren't you?
Yeah, I really like her. She was a very nice woman. She helped found the School for the Deaf in St. Louis. She built the Hannibal Free Public Library.
Did she really?
And furnished it with books. 20 years later, she gave him another $20,000 to build an addition.
And she named it after her, in honor of her husband?
Yes, John Garth. John at the top of the building it says John H. Garth.
It's still there,
Memorial
so if you go to the
Yes.
library, it still says that. Okay.
Beautiful arch doors in the front. It's just a gorgeous building.
She was very serious enough about books and the libraries to have done some really good deeds, didn't she? And you've got some samples of what she did.
Yeah, she did. These are similar to highlights. These are the St. Nicholas books. And they're similar to what we have as highlights books, the periodicals for children. But at the end of the year, she would have her books, her children's books, leather bound. So it's kind of interesting that she did that. So it'll have the volume and had their name Garth put to the bottom of them.
And then she would even actually give books away and deliver books to kids, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she would. That's
Merry Christmas for Frank Mahoney,
I think that's the name
maybe,
here in town, and-
from Mrs. Garth. So and these were kids of the people that helped her here. That
Probably some
paid
of
help?
yeah, we found these in different, you know, book sales and
Yeah.
things like that, or somebody will find something and they'll
She was
bring it to
all
us.
about literacy, wasn't she?
Yeah,
Huh?
she just really was a nice lady. She really cared about people.
She does. She sounds like
yeah,
a
that's
gem.
why I kind of hook up with her personality,
Yeah.
I think.
We're gonna talk to your husband and you as we go through this house. It's going to be a remarkable experience. I can tell already. Thanks.
You're more than welcome. We love to share it with people. That's why we're here.
Well, Julie, the Garths didn't have a big family, so they wanted a big dining room, so they must have entertained a lot. Is my guess.
I'm sure they did. You don't have a house this size without doing some entertaining.
This is and this dining room table gets quite a bit bigger, doesn't it?
There's actually 8 leaves that go to this table, and it goes from one end of the dining room to the other.
It's just beautiful, and the way you have it decorated, my goodness, you're ready. You're ready for the holidays, aren't you?
We're ready to go.
This is terrific.
Yeah.
It's just terrific. And this is the table that was here, and like you say, it can be expanded to 8 leaves.
It's all walnut.
The tables or the chairs are all here. Now you were telling me something interesting about the chairs. This chair over here, of course, is different.
This chair is a youth chair. It's a little bit higher than the other one, so that their daughter, Annie, because she was 7 years old when they first moved here, so that it was a little bit higher chair for her to sit on. This is upholstered. The second owners did this. This is all upholstered, probably 1912 or 1915. But they were originally the caning, like this one here. This chair is a little bit wider. This was Mrs. Garth's chair, not because she had a bigger back end, but because of the bustle of her dress.
Oh, okay.
So this is
And that's
much
why
wider.
No
arms on it. This is this is what the regular size is. So everybody else, including Mr. Garth, would sit in a chair like this, but because of the bustle of her dress, they needed it a little bit wider. So this was Mrs. Garth's chair, and she would sit at this end of the table, while John Garth probably sat at the other end.
You are so fortunate to have so many, I mean, that this stuff stayed with the house. It's just
Well,
remarkable.
if this is just your cottage when you sell it, it's kind of like our beachfront
It's their
property or something.
cottage.
You just kind of like, yeah, it's just the cottage furniture. I don't want to keep it.
Another Carrera marble fireplace over here
Yep.
with this wonderful engraving.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to see, but you can see the basket of fruit.
Right
And
here. Yeah.
And then on the opposite side of you, there you have some fish and you have some fowl. See the fish on this side here hanging there? There's fish. And then that one has some the fowl on that side.
The fish are down here. They're kind of hard for the camera to spot, but there
Yeah.
they are. Yeah. Okay.
So-
And this buffet, of course, was here too, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty massive, isn't it?
It sure
And we
is.
know that it had to sit here because there's no other empty wall space that is that wide. So we know that that little baby has sat there since, you know, the house was finished.
And again, the wallpaper in this room tells a story too. This is not just, you don't just go to
This
Walmart
is not,
and pick
no,
the wallpaper, do you?
you don't. This wallpaper was made for this room. They take the old plates, if you've seen on any of the shows, on the other PBS shows, that will show how this wallpaper is made. And this has 14 colors, and I had to pick all 14 colors with Bob Christie. It was very difficult picking navy blue for the color of the lady's hair, and I mean, it was really awesome. But they paint the one color on, and when it dries, they roll it through and do the next color, and then the next color, and go through. So it was really pretty difficult. So I kind of laughed because Bob Christie would come over just when we were finished with breakfast.
Now, he's the curator you're
He is the curator,
about.
right, from Quincy. He would come over and he'd tell the story and stuff, and I would say, you know, Bob, I know that you had all 14 of those colors picked out already. You just made me think that I picked all of these colors out. And he said, you knew that? And I said, oh, you know.
They went on one at a time.
One at a time.
What was the last color?
The last
to go
color
on?
was the gold. If you're standing at one angle, you can see the gold, but you look over a couple of feet and you don't see the gold. So it's just how the light reflects it, if you can see it. So it's really awesome. But
Outstanding.
you know, this will buy a nice small house for what we paid for this wallpaper in here.
Hey, we promised we would talk about that flying staircase. I think we can get to
Yeah,
it very
let's look at
easily
it,
from
yeah.
right here.
Now, there's 7 of these on the National Register of Historic Places.
7 what?
7 flying staircases that go
There are only 7 that go up.
all 3 floors.
All 3 floors.
There's flying staircases that are 3 floors, but this one is supported from here and all the way. Several of them, the wall will start here.
Supported from here.
just this bottom part. The rest of it is all cantilevered from the outside.
Okay.
So when you're standing up on that, I'll have to take you up there. When you're standing up on that top third floor and looking down, you're just hanging. You're suspended on nothing. So there's a lot of people that hang onto the wall as they go down.
Well, yeah, it's a little spooky when you look at it that way. You know.
Now you can see where they put some bars here at one point, and that's when the home was open for tours. And when you've got 45 people getting off a bus, hanging over that railing, looking down, that's only there to support the railing, not to support the staircase.
I see. Just as phenomenal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, one more thing before we leave here. Fortunately, this was never painted, right?
No.
Okay, and this is looks like maybe walnut. I'm not
Yes.
sure what that is. It looks like, but the stairs have an interesting story. When you got here, they were painted white.
They were
weren't
painted white. Yes, they were painted white. And when we bought the mansion, we thought, well, we've got to strip that and get that down to the original.
Oh man, what a job!
At the time the house was built, it was they faux finished everything. Not because they couldn't afford the really good wood, but it was just really cool to have the faux finishing. So we decided, we talked to a couple different artists, and they said, well, I can faux finish this. So this is all done with little beaver hairs and little combs and little brushes.
Well, they're good.
And,
they're very good.
And to make it look like. So when people say, oh, this is like, no, I spent a lot of money to have that look like it's real wood, as did the Garth.
Goes really well with the banister. It really does.
It's opposite of what it was years ago, where labor today is a fortune and materials, but back then, it was probably 25 cents a day, and it was a lot different. So the labor today is much more, but they did a great job. All the doors and the woodwork is all faux finished, so that's really awesome. It's like, wow, it is? You're like, look really close, it is? But it's pretty awesome.
John, I asked your wife this, what it feels like to pull up to this place and say, hey, I own this place.
It is kind of a neat feeling. I mean, to look at it and say, oh yeah, I do. Because it gives you a sense, since it is so majestic, it is very different, that I really do live there.
Yeah, I know. And it would fill me with pride, I think, although I would be overwhelmed with all the work that it takes to keep this place going.
It does take a little work.
It does.
Definitely.
I wanted to stop here because everybody recognizes this fella. And what's remarkable about this particular picture is it's signed by Mark Twain himself.
Yes, it is.
To John Garth, isn't it? There's
Correct.
an inscription telling him...
the inscription says, in reverent memory of John Garth, and an unbroken friendship of 55 years. Mark Twain, June 1902, which is the last time he came here to visit.
Wow. And he didn't, Twain had this thing about, he didn't mention other people's names and his name together.
That was pretty particular that he did it for this, but this was a gift to Mrs. Garth, and he knew Mr. and Mrs. Garth while they grew up together here in Hannibal.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he used John Garth as part of the composite that makes up Tom Sawyer.
Is that right?
That is true.
Oh, okay, so he, having grown up with him, he must have thought a lot of John Garth then, because Tom Sawyer was a good character.
Yeah, he was a good
he was
character.
really good, a good, smart kid. And through his life as an adult, Mark Twain would come here back to Hannibal, and when he did, he would stay with the Garths in this room.
Also, from his autobiography, there's a quote in there. He says, "I spent many a night in John and Helen Garth's beautiful and gracious home." So when he'd come back to Hannibal, he would stay with the Garth family because, like I said, according to that picture, I mean, they remained friends all through adult life. So.
I would assume that when you run a bed and breakfast here, and I would assume that some people want this very room just because this is the bed Twain slept in, isn't it?
This is not the bed that Twain slept in.
It's not.
This is the room.
Oh, it's the room
that he stayed in, but this bed is not original to the mansion. So he didn't sleep in this particular bed, but he stayed in this room. And we know that because this was the guest room here in the mansion. So any guests that they would be in this particular room. And like I said, he came here numerous times, so he would stay in this particular room.
I think your wife was telling me that I was mistaken. This is not the bed, but the bed is like it. This is a like bed, and he would sleep with his head at the foot end of the bed.
Yes,
and look at the beautiful lady there on the bed.
He thought it was more appropriate to see the beautiful headboard as opposed to look at the footboard. that. So I mean, that's why he would sleep in that direction.
To each his own, and nobody ever said that he wasn't an odd duck. So what the heck, right?
That's for true.
Let's go to this other room. That would be the guest room.
Yes.
And the room in here would have been the daughter's room.
Yes.
After you, sir.
Okay.
And you can see you've made some upgrades here because you've got a hot tub in here, et cetera, for your guests. But this is where the story that I like is when you bought this place, you had to repair the roof.
Right.
You had to repair the foundation.
Correct.
And you had this ongoing issue with the fireplaces because you wanted working fireplaces.
Yeah.
And they were coal fireplaces, right?
Right. Well, originally these were all coal burning furnaces. They actually had a door on here. They'd open up the door, they'd put the coal in there, light that, and then it would warm up or heat up this iron front, and then heat would radiate from that. That's the way they actually originally heated the mansion. But I always wanted to activate the fireplaces so I could use them. And all of them were plugged, and I wanted to unplug them. So this is the one I started with, and it just was like a wooden piece of wood back up inside of here, right at the bottom of the chimney. So I pulled that piece of wood out, and out falls all these bricks, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this thing is falling in on me, and I'm going to have a huge, huge problem if that's what's really happening.
Goodness.
But anyway, it was pretty dirty, so I built a plastic tent around here so that all the soot wouldn't fly all over. But I took out all the bricks, and I counted them. I had 5-gallon buckets. I carried 50 5-gallon buckets of bricks out of here. But once I got them all out, and I cleaned up in there a little bit, and you could see all the way up in there, all the bricks were still there. And I think what really happened was when they repaired the chimneys in this building, instead of getting rid of them in a normal way, they said they're not using these fireplaces, just throw them down the chimney. Yeah, so this was by far the worst one. They weren't quite so bad in the other rooms, but this one was by far the worst one.
Well, it's great now that you've got most of these where you can use them again. Most of them are now rigged for gas. And you're able to use them again.
They are gas inserts, and all the ones, all the rooms on the second floor here, and 2 of the rooms on the 3rd floor have these gas inserts, and we have gas inserts in 2 of the fireplaces on the 1st floor also.
You never know, do you? You never know what you're going to get into.
You never know what you're going to do. But this was one of the real problems I had with the curator, because I wanted to have these fireplaces working. And when I first called people to come out here to fix that so it would work, they said, no, it can't be done, can't be done. So I put up with that for a couple of years, and finally some guy came out here and says, okay, well, we can run gas pipes outside the house and into the back of the chimneys and do that. And the curator says, no. He says, you ruined the integrity of this house one time, and it's gone forever. So we didn't do that. But then eventually they came out with this flexible gas line. It's a yellow pipe. And we were able to run that underneath the floors and into the fireplace and have all these gas inserts and not see any of that equipment. So it worked out in the end. I mean, the curator was right. We don't have pipes hanging on the outside of the building. We got pipes underneath the floors, and we got working fireplaces. So that's what I really like.
Good.
Yeah.
John, one thing you tried to do, and were successful at doing, was making sure that each of these rooms has some original furnishings in it.
Yes, like this room in here, we have 2 original pieces. This dresser right here is original, as well as this settee. We actually moved around the furniture throughout the house to make sure every room up here had at least one original piece.
That's a great idea. And this gorgeous bed that we're looking at, this is not original. You bought this piece, but you bought it for a very good reason, because it's exquisite.
Well, the curator is the one who talked us into buying, and this bed I personally paid $25,000 for.
Oh my God.
And we advertise this as the most expensive bed that you can sleep in without actually owning, so.
Okay, so you can come to the Garth Mansion and you can sleep in this bed.
That's right.
And it may be worth as much as $50,000.
Right.
And the reason it's expensive is because it actually the lineage is on the bed. It's stamped on there.
This is signed, dated, and stamped right on the bed itself. It's made by Mitchells and Ramsburg, which is a manufacturer of fine furniture back in the early 1800s.
Wow, okay. Now, this is half of the master suite. This is Mrs. Garth's half.
This would have been Mrs. Garth's room.
Right, and they didn't sleep together. He slept in an adjoining, and if we can see the pass-through door right there, can't we?
Right, and that door would go into the other room, and so they could get together without actually going into the hallway. Nobody knew they actually got together.
Okay. So Mr. Garth would have come back into his part of the master suite through here.
Yes.
And They slept separately. I guess, I don't know if that was common at the time or not, maybe among rich folks because they could afford separate rooms,
They could afford separate
right?
rooms, absolutely.
Yeah. And this bed, that Mr. Garth's bed, is not original to the room, but he had a bed like this, didn't he? It was about this same period.
Well, this is a period bed. I mean, all the beds we have in the mansion are from that period, you know, the 1860s, 1870s.
Yeah.
They're all period pieces.
And the pieces that are original to this, well, this armoire, for instance, God, this thing is immense. You didn't have to move this, did you?
Those are called knockdowns because you can actually take them apart. They
you
come,
can?
They
Well,
come apart
okay.
fairly easily and can move that way. They call it a knockdown.
Yes.
So they can move. That piece is original as well as that dresser over there.
This looks more modern. I don't know why. It has a more modern look to me.
I'm not sure why either.
But it's beautiful. And then the other piece you're talking about is the dresser over there.
Correct.
Yeah. Very nice. And the chair next to it, that's period too. That's a stuffed chair from the 1890s, I guess.
Actually from the 1850s.
1850s. Wow.
Yes, sir.
We talked about the fireplaces at length and what you went through to get the fireplaces back to working again, since they were coal burners originally. And this is a good example of what you're able to do with gas.
Correct.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's adds a lot of ambiance to the rooms.
And more Carrera marble.
More Carrera marble
everywhere you
fireplaces, yes.
That's great. 11 of them, I think, isn't that right?
This is about 10 of them, I think.
Okay. Thanks, John.
You're more than welcome.
In 2005, the Rolsons built this reception area onto the mansion. And in February, they hold a bridal expo here. And Julie says, even if you don't want to get married or renew your vows, you're welcome to come by and get a free bite to eat. With another Illinois story in Hannibal, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you. For a DVD copy of the program you've just seen, send 1995 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, subject, and when the program aired. You can also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605.